What if the very thing you were taught guarantees your financial safety, your paycheck, is actually the exact trap keeping you from true wealth? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a core concept that completely flips the script on how we view time, money, and work. We're stepping off the traditional path we've all been taught to really understand the hidden mechanics of wealth generation.
Okay, let's dive straight into this famous quote from Robert Kiyosaki's teachings. It totally challenges the standard 9 to 5 mindset we've all been spoon-fed since childhood. Think about it for a second. We're wired to believe that if you want money, you have to go out and physically trade your labor for it, right? You work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. But the wealthy, they approach this entirely differently. They build or acquire systems and assets that generate income, whether they're physically working or not.
Which brings us to part one, the job trap and financial security. You know, most of us are taught to just chase a secure job, but relying solely on a monthly salary might actually be a hidden trap. We go to school, we get the degree, and the ultimate goal is always presented as finding safety. But here's a pretty harsh reality. Your salary isn't a reward for your hard work. Think about your own workplace. You probably have someone on your team who works incredibly hard, going above and beyond every single day. And right next to them is someone who does the absolute bare minimum. Yet at the end of the month, they both get the exact same paycheck. Why? Because you aren't actually selling your skills or your effort. You're selling your time. It's really just a flat rate you accept in exchange for signing over 8 hours of your life every single day.
To really put this into perspective, our source material shares this wild historical anecdote from 1956. It's about a 45-year-old female manager who literally gave up her precious Saturdays to stand in line and work tirelessly. She traded her weekends for absolute pennies, just 25 cents an hour, all because she believed that job was her only safety net. Despite being a highly respected, hardworking manager, she accepted a minimal flat rate and traded her life away hour by hour. It kind of makes you wonder, are we making that exact same mistake today, just with slightly bigger numbers?
Let's look at why that happens in part two. Fear and desire drive people. So, what are the psychological forces keeping that manager, and honestly, the broader middle class, stuck in this daily grind? It's not just about the math. It's about the deep-seated human emotions that literally dictate our financial decisions. It creates this endless, exhausting loop. First, you have the fear of poverty, the very real fear of not being able to pay the bills. That fear forces you to get a job. But once you get the job and that paycheck hits, a new emotion takes over. Desire. The desire to buy a nicer car, a bigger house, take a vacation. Fulfilling those desires increases your expenses, which means suddenly you need more money. So what do? You work harder at the job, driven right back by that initial fear. It's a relentless cycle. Now, I want to be super clear here. Having a job is not a bad thing. There is absolutely no shame in honest work. And for almost everyone, a job is a 100% necessary starting point to fund your life. But the critical shift in perspective is realizing that your job should be a bridge to building real wealth, not your ultimate destination until you finally hit retirement. It's just a tool to generate the initial capital you need to start building assets. That takes us to part three. The rich don't work for money. If the working class trades time for a paycheck because they're driven by fear, how exactly do the wealthy operate differently when faced with those exact same emotions? Because let's be real, the wealthy experience fear and desire too. The difference entirely lies in their reaction. When faced with a lack of money, the middle class reflexively look for a job. They polish up the resume, maybe go back to school, and look for a slightly higher salary. But the rich, they look for a system or an asset they can create to generate income without constantly trading their physical hours. Even if they face total bankruptcy, like Kiyosaki himself did at one point, their first instinct isn't to run out and get a secure job. Instead, they sit down and figure out how to build a business or an asset from scratch. Let's see how that looks in practice with part four. Comic Library, the first asset. Let's look at a really cool, concrete example from the source material about how two young kids figured this whole secret out back in 1956, using nothing but observation and a bit of creativity. These kids noticed a local store was throwing away promotional comic books. Instead of walking past it, they asked to keep them. They took these discarded comics, cleaned up a space in a basement, and set up a makeshift library. They charged the neighborhood kids 10 cents for 2 hours of access. Since a kid can read a bunch of comics in 2 hours, it was a massive bargain compared to buying just one for 10 cents. But the real genius here, they even hired their younger sister to run the day-to-day operations for $1 a week. A brilliant, if maybe slightly exploitative, sibling business model built from absolute zero. And get this,
This setup generated $9 whole a week in completely passive income for those kids. Now, $9 a week in 1956 was a lot of money for a child, but the amount isn't the point, it's the mechanism. They were making this money while they were physically away, working for free at the store. They had successfully built an asset that made money work for them. Which brings us to our final section, make money work for you. Now you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, a basement comic book library is a cute story for 1956, but how on earth does that apply to me today? How do we build modern basement libraries without a massive upfront investment? Well, the modern equivalent is intellectual property, or IP. Intellectual property allows you to put in the immense effort once and then reap the financial rewards continuously over time. You aren't selling the hours it took to make the thing, you're creating a digital asset that works for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all across the globe. Our source uses creating YouTube content as the perfect modern example of this. Think about it. You might spend 8 grueling hours scripting, filming, and editing a single video. When you first publish it, it might earn, what, $1 a week? If you look at that like an hourly wage, it's absolutely terrible. But remember, it's an asset, not a wage. Over time, as views compound and subscribers grow, that single video continues to earn ad revenue. Eventually, a whole library of these digital assets can scale to earning $3,000 a month, or way more, without you lifting a finger to do extra daily labor for those older videos. When you think about the comparison between these two paths, the difference is just wild. A salary is this rigid, flat line. If you want more money, you literally have to work more hours or beg for a promotion. But an IP asset, sure, it starts slow and requires intense upfront labor with barely any immediate reward, but eventually it hits a compounding curve. It scales in a way that trading time for money simply never can. To pull this off, you really have to adopt what the source beautifully calls the farm theory mindset. Think about it. A farmer doesn't plant a seed on Monday and expect to eat the fruit on Tuesday, right? You have to plant the seeds of your project today. You have to water them through hard work, dedication, and consistency, even when you don't see a single cent of immediate financial return. You endure the tough seasons, but eventually, that harvest feeds you passively for years to come. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question. Something that should really change how you look at your free time. Look at the hours you have after your day job. Instead of just consuming content or resting on the couch, ask yourself, what financial asset are you going to start building today to buy back your freedom? Because the seeds you plant right now are exactly what determines the harvest you reap.